Brochim Habayim, welcome to our new year of Torah learning. We are beginning with Parshat Bereshit, and the title of this discussion is The Heart and the Serpent. I'm beginning this Parshat discussion with an introduction to the theme I have chosen for this year of learning. Together, as I shared in the last couple of weeks, we will be exploring perhaps the not-so-obvious texts, lost pasukim, and concepts that we have not considered at length in the past. For more conventional overall teachings that I have shared in the past, just scroll through the archives on the Melrose B'nai Israel Emmanuel Facebook page or on my own Facebook page, and you will find them. I'm also engaging my tech support person, our son, who is going to hopefully help me set up a YouTube channel and then upload all of these to them. So, to begin, we're going to begin with a most curious creature, the serpent, that appears in our first Parsha. Why, you may ask? Blame my daughter's daughters, Nellie and Ne'ima. They wanted to do a deep dive for their Torah learning experience in preparation for their upcoming bat mitzvah this Shabbat into the serpent and come to an understanding of the Nachash. So dive we did. Now, I'm not a lover of snakes, to be sure, but as we know, there is what to learn from every creature according to Chazal. If not, why would they be here? So here we go. Parak Gimel of Bereshit. V'anachash haya arum mikol chayot hasadeh. Now, the Nachash was more arum, cunning, curious, naked, exposed, all these are meanings, than all the beasts of the field. And it said to the woman, Elohim, Ki amar Elohim lo tachlu mikol eitz hagan. Did God really say you should not eat of any of the trees of the garden? So Rashi explains and looks at the word arum and relates it to being cursed. Not all commentators agree with that. Again, Rashi lives in the land of good or evil. And a lot of what we're going to be doing this year together is really looking at that nuanced middle, which I think is so important in our lives where we're getting too much of this side, and our lives have become politically, culturally, religiously, every which way a boxing ring. And I can't embrace that. So I want us to hang out in the middle and try to figure out these differences and what sets up all of these conflicts and look at the internal elements of what we are addressing. So the question here, first question, is in terms of the use of arum, what is the connection between naked, cunning, and tricky or sneaky? All meanings of arum. Even according to some, curious is also one of those meanings. So the woman says to the serpent, going back to Parak Gimel, we can eat from all trees of the garden. However, when we pri ha'etz asher b'toch hagan, amar Elokim lo tochlu. But the garden, the tree that is in the middle of the garden, God said, you shall not eat of it, v'lo tig'u ben bo pen tamutu. And if you do, you will die. You shall not touch it. She added to what God had said, v'lo tig'u. So she adds directions when she is speaking with the arum, with the snake, with the nachash, as opposed to the first iteration of what God had said. So the second question is, what is the woman trying to do here? Is it right or is it wrong, and why? If the original instruction was, you shall not eat of it, lest you die, what harm comes, you shall not touch it? Any of us who are Medayakim, who are exacting about observing kashrut, know very well that there's a whole host of expansions based on simple pasukim in the Torah that result in our very complicated kitchens with all of the sets of dishes and the separation areas and the sinks and all of that. So clearly, we understand the idea of adding boundaries, what we call sayag Torah, a fence around the Torah, so that you do not do something that goes against the initial teaching. The serpent then says to the woman, Lo mut tamutam, you will not die. He pushes her until she touches it, according to Rashi. D'chafa ad shenagabo. So she added this phrase. The snake uses that phrase, and she breaks that boundary. So she is now, if you will, broken through the fence. And then he says to her, according to Bereshit Rabbah, just as you have not died by touching it, you will not die by eating it. God knows. We now go back to the actual text. Ki yodea Elokim ki bayom achlim mimenu v'nifkachu einechem v'yitam ke'elokim yodei tov v'ra. God knew that on the day that they would eat of the Eitz Hadat, the tree of knowledge, they would become more similar to God in knowing the difference between good and bad. The woman sees that the tree is good for food, that it was a delight to the eyes. All of her sensory elements are going. Touch, seeing, all of that. Smell, the nechmad ha'etz, and the tree is beautiful. Lahashkil, if I'm seeing this tree, and if I'm touching this tree, and if I'm smelling the fruit, certainly that is contributing to my sensory experiences, to my wisdom. So she takes of her fruit, she eats it, and she gives it to her husband. Why does the woman do this? What does she want? Again, is there anything wrong with this inherently? The eyes of both of them are opened. Verse 7, V'tikachna ayin shneim v'yadu ki eromim. And they know that they too are arumim, the same word that was used to describe cunning in the case of the snake. And here for them, it means naked. And they sewed fig leaves and made themselves coverings. So Bereshit Rabbah again indicates that when it says V'tivkachna einei shnehem, that their eyes were opened li'inyan kachma, lo li'inyan re'iyah mamash. That we're talking about wisdom that is acquired, not extrasensory sight. They knew that they were naked. Now, they would have known this before, or they would have been aware of this before, but it wouldn't have bothered them. But somehow, now, there is a differentiation in their understanding of what it means to be naked than it did before. So this is what we now have, this knowledge. And to what degree does this knowledge bring anything positive? And to what degree does the knowledge bring anything negative? That's what we're sort of left trying to understand. They hear the voice of God going in the garden, and the man and the wife hid from God. Vayitchabeh ha'adam v'ishto. Just a comment. Vayitchabeh is the singular, the man, and his wife goes along with him, his woman. I'll come back to that in a minute. Regarding in the midst of all the trees of the garden. So we've spoken about this before, where you will have a singular verb, but it refers to the actions of several. We'll see this with Miriam and Aharon. We've seen this in other instances, and here we see it yet again. Both of them hide, but the man takes the initiative. And God, understanding this, Vayikra Hashem Elokim El Ha'adam, calls out to the man and says, Ayeka, where are you? The same thing that God will say to Cain later after he kills Abel. And we'll hear it at other times as well. Not that God needs to know, but we need to answer. It goes back to the discussion last week of the texts from Shemini Atzeret, we are the then clause. If we believe in God, then we have to answer to God. So Avram then says, I heard your voice in the garden, at kolcho shamati began ve'iraki irum anochi, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid. And God says, who told you were naked? Who told you that this was a problem? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat? And again, God knows this. The same thing will happen with Cain. The same thing will happen with others later. God is not asking the question because God needs the answer. God is asking the question because the human beings need to answer. So now we have the Nachash, the serpent, the snake. It's sometimes used as an omen, the same word. Arum, we just talked about, meaning naked and bare and curious and sneaky and sly and crafty. And how are all these meanings connected? How are they good? And how are they not so good? And again, it's not so simple. Through this series of Divrei Torah and Parshat discussions, I'm going to be asking lots of questions week after week after week. I'm not asking them to give you answers. I'm asking them for you to think about the answers, what they might be for you. I know what they might be for me, but they might be something different for you. So at this point, the man says, and we see the beginning of this contention between the personae or the actors in various situations. Hey God, this woman that you gave me, remember chapter 2? She gave me of the tree, so I ate. And God says to the woman, what is it that you have done? And the woman says, the serpent enticed me and I ate. Now, notice that everybody's playing the blame game here. God comes to Adam, he blames the woman blames the serpent. And of course, God creates all of this, and if God knows everything, and if God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent, which we believe God is, then God is outside the chronology of these circumstances and knows how it's going to work out. Yet it's us, again, we're the then clause, we have to play them out. At this point, God says to the serpent, because of all you have done, you will be cursed, you will be on your belly, you will eat dust. And then the hatred between him and the woman, and the conflict between the woman and the man, and pregnancy and all of this. And in terms of whom is being blamed, no one, not the man, not the woman, not the serpent, is taking appropriate accountability. So all have consequences. And who mets out the consequences? The very one that created all of them. So there are obvious questions which this story raises. 1, why a snake? God created every being, including a snake. So why not a snake? 2, God knows the past, the present, and the future. Therefore, God would know, if we don't, that snakes will have both good and bad qualities. They will have a purpose in this world, even if we don't understand it. 3, perhaps God wanted Adam and Chava to understand and learn that even a snake can be a type of role model and teach us. We all have what to learn from each other. 4, what may appear to be good may not be so good, and vice versa. And finally, God wanted to show all, especially Adam and Chava, that they did not have to be perfect. So the question that now comes is, what does the Nachash represent? Is the Nachash something outside of ourselves, or is it something inside of ourselves? So let's go and look at another critical piece of this text, and that is the issue of Bechira Chavshit, a free choice, which we are told that back in chapter 2, Vayipak Bapiv Nishmat Chayim, God breathed the soul of life into the human being and became a Nefesh Chaya, a human person, and with, according to Rashi, That Yitzar is written with 2 Yodim, which is unusual, and that is to refer to the Yetzar Tov, Yetzar Ra, that we all have a good potential and a bad potential. We need both. At one point in the Gemara, the question is asked, why do we have to have the bad potential? Why don't we just get rid of it? And we're told that if there was no Yetzar Ra, if there was no sense of everything is not complete and I need to do something else, and there would be no creativity, there wouldn't be an egg in the world, nobody would be created, we wouldn't have had the generations, and we wouldn't be here today. Back to the snake. That's the human's challenge. Now let's go back to the snake, because we're going to bring them together in the end. The snake was the most cunning arum of all the beasts of the field that God had created. What was the snake's sin? Rashi explains, based on the Gemara, that it's considered a mesat, an inciter. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman says in the name of Rabbi Yonatan, from where do we learn that no arguments are presented for the one who incites? From the primeval snake. As Rabbi Samai taught, the snake had many arguments which it did not present. And why did the Holy One, blessed be God, not argue for the snake? Because the snake itself did not argue. Ever since Eve's transgression in the Garden of Eden, snakes, in Christian tradition, have been associated with lies, evil, temptation. But in other cultures, as far-flung as ancient Greece and Egypt and indigenous North America, snakes symbolized fertility, rebirth, renewal, even immortality. The Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of eternity that was famously depicted on King Tut's tomb in the 14th century BCE, is a serpent devouring its own tail. From the Aztec god of wind, rain, and creation to the semi-divine human snake creatures that guarded the Buddha, there are 9 snakes or serpents that have emerged through history or myth to play important roles in the cultures they represent. First of all, the snake in the Garden of Eden, as we've just discussed. And when the snake is cursed, you will crawl on your belly and you will eat dust all the days of your life. Debate has long raged over whether the serpent in Bereshit was a literal reptile or an allegory for sexual desire or temptation, or even Satan himself, who often appears, especially through Midrash, in various narratives. In other cultural contexts, snakes were driven out of Ireland by St. Patrick. There's a Viking sea serpent from Norse mythology called Jormungand. We know of the Leviathan back to the book of Eov, of Job, Medusa, the Gorgons in Greek mythology, the Quetzalcoatl in Aztec art that consumes humans and later becomes a human. Naga in Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism, the Hopi snake dance in Native American religious rites, and the legend of the white snake in the ancient Chinese myths. Serpents appear all over our various mythologies, our religions, our cultures. So how are these snakes different from our Nachash? Well, for one, in a lot of these traditions, this traversing, and we're going to see this in later discussions as well, for example, in mythology, go between humans, God, and animals, and they morph into each other. That does not happen anywhere in our Jewish tradition, in our Jewish texts. The serpent is on the ground, the human beings are dust from the ground, and B'Tselem Elohim, and God is God. And we do not have any of this traveling. In Bereshit, Parak Bet, we read, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created on the day that God made earth and heaven. There was no tree, no field was yet on the earth. God had not brought rain on the earth. And we then go to our pivotal verse that I explained before, that I mentioned before, Vayitzar Hashem Elokim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama v'yipach b'apiv nishmat chayim v'yihi ha'nefesh adam l'nefesh chaya. God forms the human, the earthling, from dust of the ground and breathes into the earthling's nostrils, the soul of life, and the earthling becomes a living soul, differentiated from all creatures. And this is told separately from Parak Aleph in chapter 1 of Bereshit, where the order of all created things is given But here in chapter 2, and we discussed this more in previous years, the interrelation of the ordered explanation of Parak Aleph and the causative relational narrative of chapter 2 is given. Rashi teaches that when God breathes into the human being, into their nostrils, vayipak ba'apiv, asa'u min ha'tachtonim u'min ha'elyonim, God made the person, both of earthly matter and of heavenly matter. This person had to be created in a different way. A more complex explanation was required because this person comes to us with intentionality. And this intentionality will separate the human individual from all animals. And this is where Bechira Chavshid comes in. We learn in Pirkei Avot, Akol Tzafui V'Areshut Natuna, everything is known by God, revealed, yet control is given to the human being, and the world is judged with goodness. In other words, we operate on parallel planes. And please remember these parallel planes as we go through the coming Parshiot. We aspire to God's plane. We live on the earthly plane. This is important to remember when we consider our role models and the personae of our book of Bereshit, especially when we look at their lives and the missteps and our disappointments in them and all of that, which we are focusing on this year. After emphasizing the preciousness of man, of the human being, in Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Akiva continues in the next verse to speak about the relationship between Hashem's knowledge of the human's deeds and the human's control and choice over one's own destiny. Though few in words, this Mishnah conveys many important ideas to one's outlook. In Bereshit, chapter 1, verses 26 through 27, we see, God says, let us make the human being, the earthling, Adam, in our image, in our likeness, and they will be controlling over the fish of the sea, the animals of the heavens, and the animals on all of the earth, and all those that creep. Vayivra Elokim et Adam b'tzamo. And God created the human being in God's image. In God's image, God created Oto, probably as close to a non-gendered pronoun as we're going to get in Hebrew. It is masculine in its ending, but it's kind of Oto refers her to Zecher and Nekeva. Bara Otam, God created the Zachar, the male, and the female elements. And going back now to Pirkei Avot, we learn Chaviv Adam shenivra b'tzelem Elokim. Chiba yitera nadat lo shenivra b'tzelem. Beloved is the human being since he is created in the image of God. A deeper love is revealed that he is created in the image of God. For in God's image, God made the human being. Rabbi Kalman of the Orthodox Union teaches as follows. Freedom of choice is a fundamental belief of the Jewish religion. Bechira means choice. Chofshi means free. The concept means that the human being is not forced to choose good or evil, but is free to choose between them. Chava could choose whether to eat from that tree or not to eat from that tree. Whether to subscribe to her own added element of not to touch it or to touch it. This is, of course, the most fundamental choice of all. The one, to continue with Rabbi Kalman, which our Torah associates with the choice between life and death, for which the Torah recommends, at the end of Devarim, as we've read in the past several weeks, choose life. Or, as the Talmud teaches, everything is in the hands of the heavens, except for fear of heavens. Hakol b'dei shamayim, chutz miyirat shamayim. Rabbi Yossi said, come and see how different the action of human beings is from that of the Holy One, blessed be God. If one of flesh and blood is angry with his neighbor, he persecutes him, as far as depriving him of his livelihood. But it is different with the Holy One, blessed be God. Although God cursed the serpent, yet when he goes up to the roof, there's his food. If he goes down, there's his food. God cursed Canaan, yet he eats what his masters eat, drinks what his master drinks. God cursed the woman, yet all are running after her. God cursed the earth, and yet all are feeding from it. That is from Yoma 75a. In Mishlei, chapter 15, we read, "One who hates gifts shall live." Rather than creating difficulties, God punishes by making life easier. The snake has readily available food wherever it goes. A slave has all his needs taken care of. But in truth, making life easy for the human being is a punishment. God places the human being in the Garden of Eden to work and to guard it. L'avdah u'shamra. Work is part and parcel of Gan Eden. Only one who works for what he gets can take pride in what he has. To have everything handed to us on a silver platter robs us of the sense of accomplishment and threatens to whittle away one's character. A core aspect of our worldview, and one that is most difficult to truly accept, is that all that we have is a gift from God. Any successful person will, if they are honest, admit that luck, the hand of God, had a role in their success. Yet, despite the risk of causing us to ignore God's role in our success, God allows us to feel that it is only because of our hard work and intelligence that we are successful, allowing us to take pride in our work. The word lev, as in the heart and the serpent in our title, is important here. We know that when we finish V'zot HaBracha on Simchat Torah, the last word is Israel, Yisrael. The first word, which we then read immediately afterwards, Bereshit, Lamed Bet Lev, our heart. Our heart brings us back around to the beginning. The last Parsha that is read on Shabbat, not in terms of Zot HaBracha and Simchat Torah, is Hazinu. This song of love, of relationality, of what we've been through together. Parak Lamed Vav, chapter 32. Lev, v'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavecha. And we will love our God with all our heart, with all our soul, and everything that we have. The heart, the mind. That is what separates us from the Nachash. When Adam goes to blame Chava, and Chava blames the serpent, in a way that's silly. The goldfish made me do it. We have a heart. We have a mind. We have intentionality. We are taught Parak Aleph of Bereshit has 31 verses, one less than that 32, meaning heart. Where's the 32nd verse? Look at the first verse of Parak Bet. Vayechulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzva'am. Now the heavens and the earth were completed in all their host. There's your 32. There's your heart. There's your completion. When we think about the serpent, whether it's inside or outside of us, when we think about cunningness and being sneaky and being completely exposed, naked to the eye, all of that, we have to ask ourselves, how do we, with our heart, with our mind, with all that we are, with the intentionality, with our understanding that we have to choose between good and bad, how do we understand how we are different? I think the answer is this. We are to begin our actions with our heart and our mind, not where the Nachash begins, with its physical reactions to its environment. That is what differentiates us as human beings. Shabbat Shalom, l'kulam, l'hitraat.